Hello everyone, my name is Apostate. I make videos talking about my journey out of Islam and other critical discourse related to the religion. Around 4 months ago, I made a live stream and a video where I criticized another ex-Muslim YouTuber, Apostate Prophet, aka AP, aka Ridvan. The gist of it was that his rhetoric was dehumanizing and unproductive, especially since the flaring up of the Israel-Palestine war. In that video, I made a mistake, where I unknowingly misrepresented a tweet he made. I knew that a day or two after I posted my video, and I'm here today to own up to my error and explain why it took me so long to do that. And I also want to mention a second mistake that I'm not quite sure counts as a mistake, but maybe things that I realized in hindsight. For a bit of context, you might want to watch the entirety of the original video. Link is in the description. If you do, I want you to keep in mind the nature of my criticisms and their relevance. And if you have a few hours to spare and some peace to sacrifice, his responses are also linked in the description. I want you to know to the nature of his criticisms and their relevance. While I am primarily making this video to own up to my mistake, I will also take the opportunity to respond to some of his accusations spanning many hours of live streams. The truth is that I misunderstood one of the tweets that he made, the one about Aaron Bushnell. I thought it was an intentional attempt at dog-whistling the racists and bigots in his audience. What he allegedly meant to do was make the case that Bushnell was unworthy of praise or martyrdom, and pointing out how the groups that should hate him praise him. AP later accused me of cutting off a part of the tweet intentionally to misrepresent him. If that was true, why would I show the entire tweet before zooming in on the part I found suspicious? I clearly misunderstood him. If I meant to misrepresent him, I wouldn't show the entire tweet at all. Less than a day after I posted the video, AP responded with a dismissive post saying that he gets to make jokes about the tens of thousands of dead people because, get this, because the dead cannot complain. He quietly took it down when even some of his fan base was appalled. Maybe because the joke could apply to Israeli victims as well, or maybe because they momentarily realized the full extent of his immaturity. Then he live streamed a few times about my video with his ride or die, a Christian apologist named David Wood. He clarified the meaning of the tweet, but not before making a lot of silly remarks about my voice, the way I talk, my glasses, my mask, a speculative autism diagnosis, and other laughable ad hominem.
Look at what he put on the screen here.
How would this make you feel? Imagine how your feelings might be hurt.
Apostate Boohoo said, AP, you need to be more considerate of people's feelings. What if a Jim Jones follower joined the stream?
Got a point.
He dismissed all my critique as stemming from my loyalty to Arabs or Muslims, or tribalism, or jealousy, or grandstanding. And even worse, he accused me of anti-Semitism and supporting terrorists and being a Hamas apologist. And he even photoshopped my head on the body of a Boko Haram terrorist and made that the thumbnail of a video. Sorry, of a live stream.
The story is a bunch of freedom fighters in Nigeria peacefully.
I detect sarcasm in your voice. That's wrong and immoral. You're just trying to win the support of white supremacists. Sorry.
OMG, LMAO, did he just call Boko Haram freedom fighters while attacking Hamas for the things that they do? This is unbelievable. I'm going to make...
Like I said in the original video, AP and David Wood don't care all that much about the victims of terrorism or war. They use them to make a point. Otherwise, why would he make such a silly and slanderous thumbnail when they're supposed to talk about 300 kidnapped children? Will somebody please think of the children? Not these two. Somebody else. Also in the aftermath were a lot of ex-Muslim YouTubers giving commentary about the so-called drama, and none of them were critical about AP, but they had plenty to say about me. Most of them asserted that I intentionally misrepresented him and that I should have talked to him privately before criticizing him publicly. Some even accused me of being a racist and an Arab or a Muslim supremacist. One publicly shared what he thought was my location, so he doxed me, while covertly threatening that no one's going to save me from Muslims now that I made enemies with the popular ex-Muslims.
You can't please everyone, but I think Apostate Aladdin is definitely suffering from this mentality where he's constantly trying to appease the other side. He's trying to tell them that, hey, look, I'm so nice. Listen to me. These ex-Muslims are so bad. I'm not like them. I'm the nice one. Let's see how far that takes you. But I think you're interested in getting a medal from other people that, hey, look how self-righteous and how fair and how empathetic you are. Therefore, we're going to put you in prison. You know who's going to come out in your defense? We will. And if you keep going the way you're going, we probably wouldn't. It's just human nature. I think I still would.
Keep your click, Hara Sultan. I don't need your virtue signaling. And I completely understand that they might not give me the benefit of the doubt and assume that I'm mistaken about that one tweet instead of knowingly lying about it. Maybe some people think that I'm obnoxious and they assume the worst. That's fine. But what was odd was how everybody fixated on my mistake and said nothing critical about his dehumanizing rhetoric or his childish behavior or the rest of my video. Not a single person asked him why he'd say, "I want Israel to be even harsher." Nobody pressed him on that. Nobody asked him why he portrayed me as a terrorist sympathizer or as a literal terrorist. What are the chances that he hasn't done anything wrong throughout all of this, or anything at all worth criticizing? So I don't really understand the reverence that other ex-Muslims have for him. I think he's still worthy of criticism. Mind you, I'm not here to list and complain about every terrible thing he did, because that's just the tip of the iceberg. But I want to paint a picture to explain my delay in handling all this. So after many videos were made about me, I received a massive influx of vitriolic messages from his supporters. I was called an Abdul more times than I can count, a secret Muslim, a terrorist supporter, a race loyalist, a towelhead, a goat fucker, etc. Once a Muslim, always a Muslim. All of those are things that AP and David either explicitly said or alluded to or allowed to be said in their live streams. When AP calls terrorists goat fuckers because they're fair game, and then considers me fair game and depicts me as a terrorist, I think it's not hard to make the connection. Go watch any of his live streams and check out his tweets. The dog whistling is obvious. There's absolutely no way that AP and David Wood are oblivious to the racist and bigoted rhetoric they encourage and allow. And they're just as responsible for it as their minions. After they supposedly cooked me on their streams, I received more hate and slurs in a few weeks than I had received from Muslims over multiple years. But to their credit, at least there were no death threats. But there were a lot of comments hoping that the Muslims get to me, so death threats by proxy, I guess? And just as I anticipated in my video, a sizable chunk of his audience are non-Muslims who use us as pawns to be discarded once we're no longer useful in their holy crusade against Islam, or their aspirations to deport all Muslims from their countries, or whatever other reason. So in that mess of a climate, my comment sections and livestream chats were full of such brigaders, behaving just as childishly as AP and David. Now at that point, within a couple of weeks from when it all started, I wanted to address the mistake I made, and I wanted to respond to him and all the others who mocked me for wearing a mask and called me a Hamas shill and so on. But I realized that the best course of action was to let the topic die so that my small channel is not overrun by his massive fan base. I could take the bullying, but I didn't want it to poison the relatively healthy environment surrounding my videos. So I thought about silently editing out the mistake so it's no longer out there, because I don't want to share false information. But I knew that doing that would also get me a lot of attention and accusations of being too cowardly to admit to my mistake. So I saw it as a lose-lose situation. I lose if I fix it silently, I lose if I talk about it, so I let the topic die and I moved on. Since then, I've made a lot of great videos, and the channel and its community have grown steadily. But I haven't felt at peace about it all because I hadn't fixed or admitted to my mistake. A couple of days ago, I cut it out of the original video and I decided to make this video. My reasons for delaying this step are not excuses. I'm just telling you how I thought. To this day, I don't know if delaying it was the right thing to do, but I had what I thought were valid reasons. If I responded, that would have egged on everyone else, and I didn't want to continue the spat because I didn't want to destroy what I worked so hard to build by inviting his commenters to sabotage my live streams. But now I feel more confident to address all of this once and for all and move on with my work. So for the rest of the video, I'll address AP directly if he's watching. Consider it an open letter. I am sorry I misrepresented you in that one tweet. I didn't do it intentionally because that's not what I do. I don't deceive or mislead, not only because it undermines my point, but because it is wrong. And I didn't need to misrepresent you. The other criticisms in the video are enough to make my point, and so was your reaction since then. I made a mistake, likely because I was livid at how selective your humanity was and how much harm you're perpetuating, but it's my mistake nonetheless, and I'm owning up to it. I'm also sorry that I made this mistake because it gave a lot of people a distraction. Most of what they highlighted from my critique was the mistake and very little else. So again, I reiterate some of what I said in the original video. How can you view war and death as play stupid games, win stupid prizes? And what did you mean by I want Israel to be even harsher? It's been several months and the death toll is still climbing. Is that harsh enough? Or would you rather they ramp it up even more? And you said all that while posing with an IDF military vehicle. Can't you fathom why someone might find that messed up? And I'll say this as bluntly as I can. Spending countless hours live streaming about the topic and even visiting Israel does not make you an authority or an expert on war or geopolitics, and clearly not on humanitarianism. So I urge you to consider the possibility that you could be wrong sometimes, and recognize the responsibility that comes with having such a large and influential platform. I know you said that you don't owe anyone anything and that you hate the label ex-Muslim and the representation factor that comes with it.
I don't really care about the representation. I saw just recently people saying, "Oh, unfortunately, AP is the biggest, most well-known ex-Muslim here, so he represents all of us. And if he says something that is too extreme, then this has an impact on how we are perceived." Sorry, this is not a problem. This is a problem to those who think that way. I care much less about these emotions and what the community expects and all of that. I don't even want to use the ex-Muslim label, to be very honest. I don't even want to use it. The community aspect makes me want to just remove the label forever and bury it.
And I'm glad that you spelled it out for us, because you're essentially agreeing with me on that point, that you don't represent me or people like me. And making that known was one of the goals of critiquing you publicly, so thank you. And I want to remind you that if you don't like the label, no one is forcing you to profit from it or use it to prop up your credibility. And no one is forcing you to recognize the responsibility of being a representative, or that your tweets and live streams are not as inconsequential as a rant among friends. If you want to deny reality, that's your choice. But everyone else is allowed to openly criticize you for your callousness without your blessing. And no one is forcing you to make videos at all. So if you cannot handle the pressure or the incessant hate that you receive from Muslims and dawah men, then take a break, take a walk, or quit. It's not an excuse to behave like them because they started it, so anything goes. The way I see it, it looks like that's the attitude you have with most Muslims. That's the attitude you have when you talk about the war. And that's the attitude that you had when responding to my videos. I started it, so anything goes. But when you stoop to such low depths while making your point, you undermine your point. Just like my mistake undermined my criticism, but yours are much worse because your behavior is consistently venomous. So if you wanted to prove that you're not a charlatan or an immature person, I don't think you succeeded at that. They started it, so anything goes. That attitude is dangerously close to a vindictive mentality of someone who's aching for a reason to explode. It seems like you and David and your audience took a page out of the dawah tactics that you're intimately familiar with. I was dismissed as a fake ex-Muslim and mocked in every way instead of focusing on the meat of the matter. You are the company you keep. So maybe you've been in the company of dawah men and psychopath bullies for far too long.
So anyway, so then when I was 7, then I realized that my job in life is to brutally go after anyone who's not as nice as I say they should be.
And you admitted that sometimes you get so riled up and post inflammatory things on Twitter or YouTube, then you delete them. I hope you understand that venting vitriol to a huge audience is irresponsible, especially when you silently delete it instead of owning up to it. I couldn't be on Twitter because people got under my skin, so I deactivated it years ago. You can do that if you can't stop yourself from rage tweeting or get a PR person to tweet for you. Just don't inflict it on others. The second mistake I made was not approaching you for a conversation, but I only consider that a mistake because of hindsight. I should have expected your outburst. It's been your MO for a while now, and I don't know why I expected you to reflect on anything I said or to act your age. But hindsight is 2020. قدر الله وما شاء فعل. Now watch them claim that this joke proves that I'm a secret Muslim. Back then, I didn't even consider reaching out to you privately because you said terrible things publicly for months, and that needed to be challenged publicly as well. I didn't need or want your permission, and I didn't want it to seem like I was anywhere near being on your side. Let me frame this in a way that might make more sense to you. Empathy is a good thing, and since you have a lot of empathy for Israelis exclusively, imagine if I had tweeted on October 7th, "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes," gloating about the suffering of Israelis, which is not an attitude I'd ever have towards war. But let's just say I did. Would you feel like you owe me a conversation about it, or would you rip me apart on a live stream while demeaning me in every way? So now that I put you in my shoes, can you understand why I didn't owe you a discussion? Can you realize that had I been modeling your behavior, I would have photoshopped you as an IDF soldier covered in blood and then mocked the accent out of you? Instead, I criticized you harshly. How dare I do that? With hindsight, I see that calling out someone like you publicly wouldn't help them change their mind. So maybe I should have approached you, not because you're owed it, but because it might have been more productive. But then again, you said so much messed up crap and someone had to sternly oppose you. So I don't know if this was a mistake or a necessary evil. And I thought you were all for the hard approach and against the soft approach, so shouldn't you appreciate my bluntness? Since I already opened this toxic can of worms, I wanted to address some of your accusations towards me once and for all. You accused me of cowardice for wearing a mask, but you don't know me, and you don't know my life. You don't know that I was an immigrant when I started this channel, and I could not risk being doxxed and possibly deported back to the Middle East. I'm not as privileged as you with your German and American citizenships. You don't know that I have family that I care about and I don't want them harmed by proxy. And I don't expect you to know these things, but I expect some intellectual honesty from you. You know firsthand the dangers of being a visible apostate, so why feign ignorance now? Just because you bit the bullet and martyred yourself as the obnoxious and easy-to-hate apostate doesn't mean we all have to do that. You accused me of still having a religious mindset, but it is you who continues to see the world without nuance or depth, to the point that you sit next to a religious preacher while he describes simplistic narratives of good and evil, and you nod along. Having nuance got me out of my religious indoctrination, so you seem to be projecting here. You accuse me of trying to leech followers or attention off of you, but why would I want your belligerent and condescendingly religious audience poisoning my channel? I'm doing this in spite of that risk, not because of it. In fact, when I posted my video, I lost a bunch of subscribers who were appalled that I'd ever dare criticize you. And I gained an equal number of subscribers who were relieved that someone finally said something about the toxic ex-Muslim phenomenon. So in a sense, I cleansed my followers. I didn't inflate them. You accused me of pandering to Muslims, but how am I pandering when I've made many sketches that depict the prophets? And unlike you, the intent wasn't to trigger and aggravate, but to push boundaries while making people think. And I've successfully done that. So you can't say that I pander when I blaspheme and I haven't compromised on my criticism of Islam.
But some people, due to certain conditions, may not be fully able to understand sarcasm when they hear it and see it, may not be able to understand basic social cues. And I'm not sure if that's what we're dealing with, or if this person is just incredibly...
But it has to be said. It has to be said. So
you accuse me of not understanding dark humor, but this isn't an edgy 4chan forum, and we're not teenagers anymore. You don't get to dehumanize people and hide behind the excuse of dark humor. There is a huge difference between a good dark joke and a joke made at the expense of innocent victims, be it Palestinians or Israelis. You don't get to call me a neo-Nazi and then just say it was a joke. I understand humor just fine. Not that there's anything wrong with being autistic. I just think that you're bad at it. I thought the "it's just a joke bro" culture died in the 2010s, so please don't revive it. One time you made a weird joke comparing me to bin Laden.
I could totally imagine somebody like Aladdin making a video about the dark side of YouTube and then including that joke that I made about drinking. That would totally be what Apostate or Osama bin Laden would do.
What the heck are you on about? Were you trying to replace bin Laden with Aladdin? I'd be embarrassed for you, but I'm mostly confused. Moving on. You've accused me of being obsessed with you when you've spoken about me for longer and in more deranged ways. So again, are you projecting? Or do you think that because I criticized you once, I can never respond again? But you know what I am actually obsessed with? Those Costco hot dogs. $1.50 for a beef hot dog and a drink? God bless America. Anyway, you accused me of being jealous or envious, but I really do not envy you. Before you turned full-blown edgelord, I didn't envy you because I knew how much hate and pressure you were under. And when you went off the rails, I told a couple of people privately that I'm upset at your wasted potential, and I think someone else could do a much better job with the resources you have, but please don't mistake that for envy. And I'm certainly not envious of you now, given your character arc and how you painted yourself into a corner. It's gotten to a point where you accept the roasting and belittling by your religious co-host and the audience for being an atheist. It's like you're a shell of the person you were a few years ago. You might see it as friendly jokes among peers, but I doubt that you can dish it back the same way about Christianity. I'm guessing that you censor yourself because you cannot upset your largely religious fan base, which your livelihood depends on. David has you on a very tight leash, so I don't envy you at all. I wouldn't wish your circumstances on my worst enemy, and I hope that you find a way out of that pickle that you put yourself in. And lastly, you accuse me of grandstanding and virtue signaling, but I follow what I preach, or at least I really try to. I try to model the behavior that I'd like to see more of. Before my video, I wasn't aware of any criticism levied against you except by Muslims, and they're easy for you to dismiss because of Islam's hateful attitude towards apostates and critics, so because of their obvious bias. But aside from Muslims, as far as I know, nobody had openly criticized you before. So it may seem to you like I'm showing off by publicly opposing you, but I'm only doing it because it's necessary. It's not my fault no one else did it before. This is a vital step in the evolution of discourse surrounding Islam, and you refuse to evolve past your immature phase. If you continue on the same trajectory, a few years from now, you'll be stuck repeating the same tired slogans and lowbrow jizz and pedophilia jokes, while I continue to evolve and make a meaningful difference. A similar thing happened in ex-Christian atheist circles. Their space fractured into different camps, some loud and obnoxious, some level-headed, some focused on epistemology, some satirical, and so on. But in the English ex-Muslim YouTube, your brand of Apostate has hogged the spotlight for far too long, and we need to break into factions with different approaches, because we should aspire to be more than just an angsty anti-dawah content farm. Any unity with you, or even the appearance of unity with you, is counterproductive for people like me. It would drown out the rest of our voices. Even if you don't mention me, your work undoes a lot of my work. So publicly delineating my approach from yours is not petty pick-me behavior. I think it's necessary to be loud about it given how disproportionately massive your following is. It's about time everyone realized that there's more to being a vocal ex-Muslim than mirroring the dawah mentality. The reason this is a video and not a conversation is because I want to get out all my thoughts for you and the audience without the harassment and distractions. I want to minimize the damage that your massive fan base will inflict. And I don't really expect or need or want a response. Unless you change who you've become as a person, or you change your goals and your methods, I have very little interest in finding common ground with you. And just like I have no reverence for the Muhammad Prophet, I have no reverence for the Apostate Prophet. You're not immune from criticism just because of your pedigree, just because you used to make informative content before it devolved into shooting the breeze with David Wood. If this video got under your skin, that is not the goal. Again, I'm not using any dirty tactics to infuriate you, I'm just standing up for myself the way I know how, by breaking down my thought process without petty bullying. I didn't comment on your face, or how you talk, or call you a secret Mossad agent, and I don't care about winning some popularity contest or debate with you. I actually don't plan on responding to whatever else you'll say about me, even if you milk this for your lazy streams. You and I are going to exist in this space for a very long time, and I don't want this hanging over my head for the rest of my life. I just said my piece, and I cleared my conscience. And if you think that I'm just a holier-than-thou jerk, so be it. I have the rest of my life to continue proving you wrong. I made a mistake, and I admit the mistake. But instead of letting you run with it and say, aha, everything you said was a lie, I implore you to take a good hard look in the mirror and reflect on what you could do better. Maybe find someone else who would second-guess you aside from David, because you're severely lacking in the checks and balances department. And I want to make it clear that I try not to take all this personally. I don't hate you, though I hate your rhetoric. And I hope that you find a way to grow out of it, because you have a massive potential to effect positive change, and you're wasting it. Someday channels like mine will outshine yours. It's going to be a difficult journey, but I'm very hopeful about it. So thank you for being a cautionary tale of what ex-Muslims should never become.
If you call yourself an apostate and ex-Muslim, then it's obvious that you're copying me. So that's that.
Yeah. So double A. If you're trying to copy the Apostate Prophet, worst copy job ever. If you had actually copied him, you'd have a much bigger following right now.
I understand that right now you have a role to play for the following you cultivated, and it seems to have stunted your growth as a person. And I have my role to play, which puts me directly at odds with your rhetoric and your methods. So I understand that I'll catch flack and mockery when I cross you, but those are just the hazards of the job. I consider you one of the many toxic dawah men that will inevitably lash out in my direction. Speaking of job hazards, I don't get hazard pay. So if you'd like to support me, links are in the description below. PayPal takes the smallest cut, but any platform is appreciated. I have no shame in asking for your support. I got bills to pay and cats to feed. And as much as I've invested of my own savings into this venture, this can't sustain me forever. So just like opposing voices are well funded, I need resources to make this sustainable and efficient. And I'd like to thank all my supporters for helping me make it this far. I could not do this without you. And as always, think critically and think for yourself. And consider watching one of these videos next.